Joe Biden goes to a black church in the South and he plagiarizes another Democrat who did the same thing. It's really sad when he can't completely divide us along racial lines without stealing from somebody else. Also, Michelle Obama apparently has some mental health issues, so she went on a Shetty podcast to talk it through. We'll share that with you. We've got Orthodox Jews crawling through tunnels in New York, and it's a very odd scene. Oh, and a great dust up between Mark Cuban and Elon Musk. They're going full UFC cage match, and we're here for it. That's all coming up. It's time for Larry. And that's me, Larry O'Connor. Please call me Larry. And here's Joe Biden. He goes down to Charleston, South Carolina. In Pennsylvania last week at Valley Forge, he tried to divide us all on political lines, but that's not good enough for our divider in chief. Now he needs to go to Charleston, South Carolina to divide us along racial lines as well. He went to a predominantly black church, and there's a lot to draw from this speech, but we're going to begin today at the end, where he finishes with a rousing quotation from a famous Southern gospel hymn that brought the crowd up to their feet. Listen to how he plagiarizes another famous American politician.
My fellow Americans, this is a time of choosing.
Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, he plagiarized another famous American politician, and he just said a time for choosing. He's plagiarizing Ronald Reagan. Yeah, that's right. That was the name of Ronald Reagan's speech that he gave in 1962 when he was making the case for Barry Goldwater. But no, you're wrong. I mean, you're right. He is plagiarizing Ronald Reagan, but that's not the really atrocious part. Watch what he says next.
My fellow Americans, this is a time of choosing. So let us choose the truth. Let us choose America. I know we can do it together, and it's the gospel song saying we've come too far from where we started. Nobody told me the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. My fellow Americans, I don't think the good Lord brought us this far.
Yes, that's rousing. That's inspiring. It got those people up on their feet cheering him as he quoted that famous black gospel hymn. No one told me the road would be easy, right? That sounds familiar. Where have I heard this before? Where have I seen this exact scene before?
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. And we know if we finish this march, what awaits us.
Now, to be fair, Joe Biden didn't completely steal from Hillary Clinton on this one because he didn't do the really atrocious, patronizing, insulting Southern black accent. I don't feel no ways tired.
Feel no ways tired.
Oh, man. But it's the same cadence. It's the same manipulative approach that got everybody up on their feet cheering, right? Somebody who wrote this speech for Mashed Potato Brains clearly knew what would happen if he quoted from this gospel song. They knew that, well, because it worked before in 2008 when Hillary Clinton was running for the Democrat nomination against Barack Obama, by the way. She was trying to out-black Barack Obama, and that, well, didn't quite work out right. But let's just watch them side by side one more time, shall we? I hear you. Sorry? You gotta play the video. We're still showing Hillary. Oh, I'm so sorry. I had the wrong tab up. All right. Good Lord. What's wrong with me? Let's do it one more time. Let's do them side by side, shall we? We'll fix that. See, we have to do that once in a while to prove that we're live when we're doing the show, because usually it's so perfect and so seamless. All right, one more time. Let's watch them side by side.
This is a time of choosing. So let us choose the truth. Let us choose America. I know we can do it together. And it's the gospel song saying we've come too far from where we started. Nobody told me the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. My fellow Americans.
You know, when it comes to shamelessly pandering to a black audience, it doesn't get any worse than that, unless you're Hillary Clinton. Here's her from 2008.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy.
It's the exact same quote. I mean, the exact same. Do they think we're imbeciles? They do. Answer to the question, they do. So there it is. Hillary Clinton should absolutely, I mean, listen, we're used to plagiarism from Joe Biden, aren't we? So, but just so you're keeping this straight, and Hillary Clinton absolutely should like sue at this point. That's my gig. That's my shtick. Joe Biden plagiarized Hillary Clinton, plagiarizing black pastors from the South. And all for a divisive, manipulative, patronizing, and cynical attempt to get votes from the black community in America because, well, they're just like them, aren't they? I mean, look at Hillary and Joe. They might as well be black Southern Baptists, right? In fact, Joe made that case in his speech.
Without the truth, there's no light. Without light, there's no path from this darkness.
If you really care about the lives lost here, you should honor the lives lost and call for a ceasefire in Palestine. Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
Now, this is a moment during the speech when, while trying to divide us all along racial lines, President Biden was interrupted by pro-Hamas terrorist protesters screaming for ceasefire now in Israel, as they are angry that he didn't spend more time dividing us along racial and religious lines. And it's like Biden is like, hey, today's race day. Friday was politics day. Today's race day. I'll get to dividing us along religious lines next week. All right. We've got an agenda here. Don't preempt it. Those protesters not only somehow made their way into a Secret Service protected event like this, but later in the evening, after flooding Manhattan with 1,000 protesters that we'll get to later in the program today, they also tried to make their way onto Andrews Air Force Base here in Washington, D.C., to demonstrate as Air Force One was landing. How is it they hardly ever get arrested? And if they do get arrested, how is it they just keep coming back for more? They're terrorists, literally. Here's Joe Biden dividing us a little bit more.
I was talking downstairs. I've spent more time in the Bethel AME Church in Wilmington, Delaware, than I have than most people I know, black or white, have spent in that church. Because that's where I started. No, I'm serious. I started a civil rights movement. I used to go to 7:30 Mass, then I'd go to 10 o'clock service with the Reverend who was then running the church, is now the bishop. She's a bishop, and I'm told your bishop had been there before in South Africa. That's where he is right now.
I don't know if anybody followed the stream of conscious discussion right there that Biden threw out there, but let's just be clear. All of that is a lie. He has not spent more time. I mean, well, hold on. To be fair, Joe Biden is about 174 years old. And so just based on longevity, if every 5 years he's gone to one service at the First AME Church in Wilmington, maybe he has spent more time there than anyone else alive, just because he's been around for so long. But yeah, he was born a poor black child. Don't forget it. And so he loves, at the same time, he will tell you that he spent more time in a First AME church because he started the civil rights movement. Is that what he said? I've started the civil rights movement, he said. Because, Dr. King was inspired by Lily White Joe Biden. At the same time, he will tell you that he spent more time in the First AME church than anyone he knows. He will also always be sure to remind you that he is a devout practicing Catholic who is in favor of abortion on demand and same-sex couples and all the tawdry things that have happened in his family. But he is He's a very devout Catholic. Don't forget it.
Those pushing the big lie have a conspiracy theory among conspiracy theories that outweighs them all. That there's what, but here's the fact. There's where we don't have facts. Their whole theory has no facts, has no proof, has no evidence.
All right, did you follow that? Because that was the money quote, baby. This is Joe Biden bringing it home like no one else can. Making the firm point about the big lie and the election and... I'm sorry, let's watch it again because I have no idea what he's talking about, actually.
Those pushing the big lie have a conspiracy theory among conspiracy theories that outweighs them all. That there's what, but here's the fact. There's where we don't have facts. Their whole theory has no facts, has no proof, has no evidence.
I think the Biden-Harris re-election campaign should put that on a bumper sticker. That is inspiring stuff there. I mean, no wonder our adversaries around the world quake in fear at this commander-in-chief and his brilliant national security prowess, because he can so properly articulate American ideals like that. The hell did he say? There's more.
That's the America we're building together. Instead of erasing history, we're making history.
Oh, yes. Instead of erasing history, they're making history. This is a good time for an update to the story we talked about yesterday, where the Biden administration was planning on ripping down the statue of William Penn, the founder of the colony and eventually the state of Pennsylvania. They were ripping the statue down, which certainly sounds like erasing history. They've actually reversed that position now. They're oh, that was premature. We were just open to discussion. We weren't really planning on doing that. They were literally going to rip down a statue of William Penn. And of course, he and his party are very much in favor of renaming streets and tearing down statues and pretty much erasing history as we know it. I mean, they embraced the 1619 Project, for God's sake. But no, it's good for him, again, to divide us along racial lines at a black church in the South by claiming that his political opponents, that would be you're interested in erasing history. There's more of Biden in South Carolina.
So a home owned by a black family on one side of a highway, built by the same builder on the other side of the highway, and a white guy living in it. The white guy's home is valued more than the black guy's. No, I know you know it. But guess what? That's how you build generational wealth.
Okay, so a couple of things here. First of all, you saw that thing. He does it all the time. No, I'm serious. No, I'm serious. No, I'm serious. He constantly does that. That's like a verbal tick of Joe Biden's. He will say something and he'll get a reaction from the audience, and immediately, dude, nobody thought you were joking, okay? So he was about to do that, but then he realized that would be insulting to his audience, which I gotta say, probably the most nimble moment of thought that I've seen from Joe Biden in a couple of months. See, if he said to a predominantly black audience after making that racially charged accusation that a house built by the same person owned by a black man on one side of the street is worth more if it's owned by a white man on the other side of the street. If he told a black audience, no, I'm serious, it would be insulting to them. Because he'd be suggesting that he, the whitest man in America, Joe Biden, knows more about racial discrimination than the black audience that he's speaking to. So he saved himself and said he's about to say, no, I'm serious. And then he said, I mean, I know you know this.
Was valued more than the black guys. No, I know you know it.
You see what he did there? But this whole idea that a house built by the exact same person on one side of the street owned by a black couple or a black... Oh, actually, no. I'm sorry. I said black couple because that's more appropriate, because these days you don't buy a house unless you're a dual income family because of Biden's economy. But did you notice he says black guy, white guy? How dare you suggest that you know the gender of an individual? What, it's only men that can buy houses in this society? And who are you to say what a guy is, by the way, pal? The bigotry from this person, this human, this... Yeah, I don't want to belabor that point. The fact, yes.
It's funny that he says that's how you build generational wealth. But that's not how his family builds.
That's true. Like, he knows everything about building generational wealth. Really, I thought the way you build generational wealth is sell access to your dad when he gets a high position in elected office, and milk money from, the communist Chinese and the corrupt Russians and Kazakhstanis. That's how you build generational wealth. I guess the other way, though, is to purchase a home and then sell it and keep that money in your family for generations. This whole idea that the exact same house built by the exact same person, but it's owned by a black guy on one side of the street versus the white guy on the other side of the street, that the house is worth less if a black guy owns it. Could you show your work, please? Could you please give us some kind of backup? Remember when we lived in the world of trust the data, trust the science, which, by the way, we shouldn't at this point since we've been lied to so much. But should he be able to just make this accusation without actually having anything to back it up? Number one. Number two, who's buying a house right now in this economy, regardless of the color of your skin? Thanks to Joe Biden, inflation or interest rates are up into 7% and more for the first time in a couple of decades. When he took office, interest rates were around 2.75%. No one's buying a house, regardless of the color of your skin. In fact, the housing crisis in America right now is really the responsibility and fault of the fact that only corporations can afford to buy new homes, new affordable homes at least. And Biden's not saying anything about that. No, because then it would be his fault and his economy's fault, and he'd actually be addressing a real problem. Instead, his whole purpose yesterday was to, I'll say it again, divide us across racial lines. Then there was this.
After the historic movement for justice in the summer of 2020.
The historic movement for justice in the summer of 2020. I don't know about you, but I have vivid memories of the historic movement for justice in the summer of 2020. And it involved a lot of cities burning down. It involved a lot of private business owners losing their inventory or losing their business due to arson. By the way, a huge majority of those business owners were Black entrepreneurs whose businesses were looted and destroyed via arson because of the, I'm sorry, what was it called again? The
historic movement for justice.
Yes, the historic movement for justice. When the police had to put on their historic movement for justice gear to protect them from bottles being thrown at them. And buildings were burned down in the name of historic movements for justice. People's lives were lost because of the historic movement for justice. I'm pretty sure they were riots. But here's Joe Biden reframing the summer of 2020 because you won't remember.
Summer of 2020, I signed the most significant police reform executive order in history.
The most significant police reform executive order in history. And by the way, 3 years later, crime is at an all-time high in American cities due to that police reform executive order. He also reveals something very significant about that executive order in this speech.
I signed the most significant police reform executive order in history. We didn't get the law passed, but guess what? I did it by executive order, significant part. But now Congress has.
So we didn't get the law passed. So guess what? I just went ahead and signed an executive order and pushed it through anyway. If I recall, a few days ago, this guy was standing at Valley Forge with his fists clenched, screaming at the camera about his political opponents being authoritarians and fascists. Maybe it's me, but when you're bragging about the fact that when your party controlled the legislative branch through the House of Representatives and the United States Senate, and you still couldn't get your law passed, so you just signed it in yourself unilaterally, I'm thinking that's kind of fascisty. It's certainly sort of authoritarian-y. It's definitely not constitutional republic-y. And here he is bragging about it. He's right. It definitely is a time for choosing. Meanwhile, over on the X.com platform owned by Elon Musk, we enjoyed yesterday an extension of this dust-up between two multi-gajillionaires, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, and Mark Cuban, a pretty rich guy, but nowhere near the richest man in the world. Now, you'll remember that Mark Cuban was flexing his muscles, bragging about how important DEI is, diversity, equity, and inclusion. In fact, he put out this really, really long post explaining how DEI is critically important to the success of corporate America. A CEO who doesn't embrace DEI is actually committing malpractice in this society, that he's harming his company if he doesn't embrace DEI. And I'm thinking to myself, Mark Cuban is a titan of industry. He's on Shark Tank. He owns many businesses, many corporations. He's an entrepreneur. And here he is whining about the fact that his competitors aren't using the same secret magic sauce that he's got. I mean, I would think in a competitive corporate environment, if you really think DEI is the magic formula for success, you'd probably be happy that your competitors aren't embracing it. You wouldn't be lecturing them. You've got to be doing what I'm doing. Otherwise, you won't be a success. Dude, keep it quiet. If you're right about that, their lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion will send them to the poorhouse, and you'll be able to gobble up their corporation for pennies on the dollar, right? I mean, if it's so good, if it's so great, if it gives a business the competitive edge, why in the hell would Mark Cuban be wagging his finger at you and lecturing you? Hey, you're not being competitive enough with me. It's like Coke saying to Pepsi, dude, your soft drink really blows. So here's our secret formula so you can be as good as we are. It makes no sense unless you recognize that DEI actually has nothing to do with having a competitive edge. It has to do with Marxism. And Mark Cuban seems to be throwing down with the Marxists. Well, Mark Cuban was quote tweeted by The Rabbit Hole. Actually, to be accurate, The Rabbit Hole 84. He was quote tweeted here with his quote, DEI does not mean you don't hire on merit. Of course you hire based on merit. And of course, they're highlighting now this article from the Daily Wire that says United Airlines pilots says it wants 50% of pilots trained in the next decade to be women or people of color. So in other words, this is an airline making an emphasis over race and gender when it comes to hiring pilots, which last I checked is a critically important job when it comes to an airline, that they are emphasizing your sexual parts and your skin color over everything else. Now, Elon Musk replied to that and said the airline industry can't find enough qualified pilots even without insane DEI requirements. And that is a fact, by the way. If you look at the airline industry and see what they're talking about internally, if you look at the Air Force and the Navy that has trained qualified pilots and airmen in their ranks, they are losing them left and right because the airlines are so competitive trying to pull those Air Force and Navy pilots to the commercial airline industry because they don't have enough qualified pilots. Elon Musk is 100% correct about that. So Mark Cuban decided to reply on Twitter. He said, this is a training school. Once they graduate, it's a multi-year process to have an opportunity to pilot for United. Since I'm a nice guy and want you to be fully informed, yeah, Mark Cuban's a real nice guy. Just ask anyone who's worked with him. I'll share with you the benefit of the 60 seconds I spent looking for how the program works. By the way, looks like multiple layers of merit-based evaluations before they can fly for United. Here's a link for you. Elon Musk then replied to Mark Cuban. Don't you love this? I mean, honestly, I don't care how this ends. I just love seeing multi-billionaires fighting with each other publicly so we can all see. Mark Cuban quote tweeted and replied and said, Mark Cuban is a racist. And here's what he actually replied to. You see where Mark Cuban said, it's a for-profit school. If they want primarily purple people eaters from Mars, it's their choice. The Rabbit Hole 84 said, wow, based on that logic, it's a for-profit school. If they want primarily white men from Alabama, it's their choice. You see, Mark Cuban is saying, hey, it's a private industry. It's a private school. They should be able to choose whoever they want, regardless of their color, which last I checked is everything that DEI is opposed to. And well, that sentiment was absolutely applied by Elon Musk to point out how racist Mark Cuban is. Ashley St. Clair, conservative commentator, said that the Elon Mark Cuban fight should be pay-per-view, and Elon Musk floated the idea of UFC between the two of them. Now, Elon, don't make a promise that you're not going to pay off. I mean, we are already geared up for the Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg UFC cage match. We were told it was going to happen. We've been praying for it to happen, and it ain't materialized. I think it's because Mark Zuckerberg might actually take Elon. Have you seen Mark Zuckerberg training at the dojo? The hell is that all about? Don't mess with those computer dweebs, my friend. So now he's saying, well, maybe I can take Mark Cuban. Please, I don't need that. Don't make promises you can't keep. Elon Musk then found this video of Mark Cuban from a couple of years ago. He says this explains Mark Cuban's ridiculous overcompensation regarding racism. All right, let's take a look at the video he's pointing out.
I know I'm prejudiced. I know I'm bigoted in a lot of different ways. You know, and I've said this before, if I see a black kid in a hoodie at night on the other side of the street, bouncing, you know, I'm probably on the same side of the street, I'm probably going to walk to the other side of the street.
A couple of things about that. First of all, as Elon pointed out with this video, same thing happened with the Me Too guys who got busted suddenly becoming fake ardent feminists. By the way, Elon might not remember this, but that applies to Mark Cuban too. Look it up. Mark Cuban was caught up in a Me Too suit with the Dallas Mavericks. Apparently, he had some upper management people who were guilty of sexual harassment and other inappropriate actions on the job. He had to do the mea culpa and prostrate himself. He's now doing the same thing with regard to race. But what he said here is incredibly revealing, isn't it?
I know I'm prejudiced. I know I'm bigoted in a lot of different ways. You know, and I've said this before.
By the way, if he is racist, if he is bigoted, if he is prejudiced, then work it out on your own, dude. But your own self-reflection and self-improvement and therapy or whatever it is you're going through shouldn't involve you lecturing the rest of us about your perceptions that, well, if you're bigoted and prejudiced, that means everyone must be bigoted and prejudiced. No, maybe you're the problem, Cuban. Maybe you're the problem, and the rest of us are actually getting along just fine with our fellow man. But then he gives his example of why he's prejudiced, why he's bigoted.
If I see a black kid in a hoodie at night on the other side of the street, bouncing, you know, I'm probably on the same side of the street, I'm probably going to walk to the other side of the street.
Yeah, so listen, that does make him bigoted. It does make him prejudiced. In fact, it makes him just as bigoted and just as prejudiced as civil rights icon Jesse Jackson. If you don't remember, here's a quote from him in 1993. Our friend Larry Elder highlighted it. And I'm quoting Jesse Jackson from 1993. There is nothing more painful to me at this stage in my life than to walk down the street and hear footsteps and start thinking about a robbery. Then I look around and see someone white and I feel relieved. That's Jesse Jackson in 1993. Pointing out the very real phenomenon based on statistical analysis of crime rates, especially in major American cities, that if you're walking down the street and you hear footsteps behind you, again, quoting Jesse Jackson, that if you turn around and you see that there's a white person walking behind you versus a black person, you feel a sense of relief, which is basically what Mark Cuban was saying. If I'm walking down the street and I see a black youth coming at me with a hoodie, I'll go to the other side of the street. Now, you can call that prejudice, you can call that bigoted, but if Mark Cuban is flagellating himself over what a Klansman he is because of that, then he has good company with civil rights leader Reverend Jesse Jackson. Maybe, just maybe, this whole race issue in America and how it's related to crime and other social and economic and cultural concerns, maybe it's a little more complicated than Mark Cuban tweeting at us and yelling at us because we're the racist ones. Maybe. By the way, Elon Musk continued going after Mark Cuban on his... This is why he bought Twitter, right? So he could do this. He found a letter that Donald Trump allegedly sent to Mark Cuban back in 2004. Somebody put this out here on Twitter. And let me blow it up for you. Dear Mark, I am truly sorry to hear that your show has been canceled for lack of ratings. When I initially called you to congratulate you on The Benefactor, little did you or I realize how disastrous and embarrassing it would turn out to be for you. If you ever decide to do another show, please call me and I will be happy to lend a helping hand. With best wishes, sincerely, Donald. I think maybe my favorite part of that entire thing is with best wishes, sincerely, Donald. Elon Musk tweeted that out and called it brutal. Brutal, absolutely brutal. Did he have one? Oh, he had one more. He found this tweet from Donald Trump in 2014. Major League Baseball was really smart when they wouldn't let Mark Cuban buy a team. Was it his financials or the fact that he's an a-hole? Elon Musk found that one and tweeted epic, which of course it is. Now a Looney Tunes story out of Crown Heights, Brooklyn. Let me show you this video. It's a famous synagogue, a shul, a school and synagogue for Orthodox Jews in Crown Heights, where students of the shul ended up vandalizing and tearing down one of the walls. I'll go ahead and talk, mute the audio here because the audio isn't important. The police had to come here. You can see that entire wall there torn down. It was because you can see some people inside the interior of the concrete wall there behind the paneling that was ripped down. They're protesting. They're staying inside there. See, there's the zoom in. Drinking some Coke. Is that kosher? Because they rolled up some concrete trucks, cement trucks, and they were going to, there's a tunnel system apparently under this shul in Crown Heights, and they were going to fill the tunnels in with cement. And these guys were protesting. They're like, no, we like our tunnels. We want our tunnels here. And so they sort of ripped across the wall and they stood in the tunnels. And it got weird. It got like, here's another shot of them pulling these guys out of the tunnel. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. The video is so bizarre, fully dressed with the hat. He's like coming out from the manhole here outside the synagogue. It's like the end of a very weird David Copperfield trick. And then he just sort of runs away so he avoids arrest. And there were arrests. It got violent. It was sort of chaotic there. News crews showed up, and here's some of the arrests, and you'll see. I mean, some of these young men are like, teenagers who were part of the school. They're students there, and the police are trying to like talk everybody off the ledge and find out. There's a bunch of rumors and speculation about where these tunnels came from. I mean, I'll be honest with you. In this day and age, I see the headline go by about tunnels underneath a synagogue in Crown Heights, and I'm suddenly afraid that these are like these pro-Hamas terrorists who are building tunnels just like the real Hamas over in Gaza. But there's a lot of speculation, and they're investigating to where these tunnels came from and why they're so adamant about keeping these tunnels and not filling them in with cement. There's some speculation that these tunnels were actually constructed and made during COVID so that they could surreptitiously and secretly get to the synagogue and attend their lessons and their scripture readings and worship. There's other suggestion that it had to do with the inner workings of the building next door and the ability to utilize a building next door without having to do a full construction. I honestly, I'm sorry. I'm used to coming to you on a daily basis with as much information and facts as I can about a story. But on this one, it's just this bizarre, weird video that captivated people's imaginations over the last 12 hours. As you can see, they keep pulling people out of the wall. It's like, the clown car at the circus. Like there's more people and more people and more people. And we're still figuring out exactly what's up. It's the 770 Synagogue in Crown Heights, and we'll hopefully get more information and more details about it. All right. Oh, speaking of Brooklyn, I want to get to this guy. This man was interrupted on his way. He was leaving Manhattan yesterday to get to Brooklyn where his daughter was. He's just a regular New Yorker just trying to go about his life. It's hard enough to live in New York. It's hard enough to commute. It's hard enough to get things done on a regular day. But then you throw 1,000 pro-Hamas terrorists protesting and shutting down the tunnels and the bridges connecting the Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn with Manhattan, and things can reach a fevered pitch. Well, this guy, he was sick of it. This has been going on for months now. These pro-Hamas protesters are acting like terrorists themselves. And let me explain. They're not necessarily murdering people the way violent terrorists do, but they are inflicting terror on people. They're breaking the law. They're making your life miserable. And they're basically saying, they're not trying to win hearts and minds here. They're not here saying, we're going to block this tunnel so you can be on our side and agree with us. Because how does that work, right? You block a tunnel and bridge on my way home and make my life miserable. I don't care if you're in favor of rainbows and Disney and cotton candy. I'm going to hate you because you're making my life miserable. See, they're not trying to win you over with these tactics. The message they're sending is, we are going to make your life miserable every day of your life until you bend down, knuckle under, kiss my ring, and get out of my way and give me what I want. Acquiesce to my demands. That's the message here. And that's what terrorists do. They're just one step away from the actual, slaughter and murder and kidnapping. But it's two sides of the same coin here. So here they are making this New Yorker's life miserable, and watch what unfolds here.
You're disrupting traffic, idiots. You can't do that. That's against the law. Violent. I'm not just going business, bro. I'm not gonna run you over. Get away from my car, bro.
All right, so, and I want you, in case you didn't hear him, he said a couple of things. First of all, he yelled at these people saying, stop touching my car. When he got out of the car, he said, I'm not going to punch you with my fists, but I'm going to get you away from my car, which is what he's doing. And he announced it ahead of time. He's like, I'm not here to fight you. I'm not here to punch you. I'm not here to inflict pain. I'm here to clear you out of the way. I don't want to run you over. But you heard him say, you're obstructing traffic, you idiots. This is against the law. Now, we'll let this play out and continue here in the background as I try to analyze this as best I can in terms of the human element here. Because we've all seen this scene play out in all of our cities. We've either seen it live in person or we've seen videos like this. And it is reaching a point in our society where it's going to explode, as you can see from this young man who's, by the way, he goes on to say, my daughter's in Brooklyn. I'm trying to get to my daughter. And these terrorists will say, well, what about the daughters who were getting killed at the hands of the Israeli government in Gaza? Let me explain why this is boiling over right now, because we have seen this play out. 1,000 protesters stopped traffic yesterday. Reports are that about 300 of them are arrested eventually. Why weren't all of them arrested? And why weren't they all thrown in jail and kept in jail so they can't come back tomorrow and do the same damn thing? We have seen this scene play out, whether it's climate activists or Hamas activists or whatever it is, where they will block traffic and the police are standing by, waiting for what? The second you block traffic, you should be arrested. The second you get in front of a car and impede their progress, the police should drag you out of the street and throw you to jail. And the fact that it doesn't happen on a regular basis, number one, encourages it to continue. And number two, continues to send the message to us, John and Joe America, who are just trying to get through our day. Just like this guy who's done with his day in Manhattan, wants to get back to Brooklyn, his lousy commute in this lousy crime-infested city where he can just get to his daughter, have some dinner, and finish his night watching the Brooklyn Nets game. And it keeps sending the message to all of us. There are two rules in society. And if you break the rules, as long as you're aligned politically with the left, you get away with it. In fact, you're celebrated. Just like Joe Biden at the church talking about the summer of justice. He's talking about rioters. He's talking about arsons. They get celebrated. They're held up on pedestals. Plazas in our major cities are dedicated to them. Statues are erected. They're heroes. But the rest of us who know the law, who know the rules, like this guy, who just wants to live our life with our husbands and our wives, we just want to get through a day following the law, stopping at the red lights. We're the ones who are treated like criminals. We're the ones whose lives are interrupted and disrupted by the real criminals. And our friend David Marcus, great columnist on multiple websites, including town hall websites, he pointed this video out, and he made, I think, a very important point. This is how Trump wins Brooklyn. I'm not kidding. And he's right. He's not kidding. Both David Marcus and I lived in New York City in the early 90s when it got so bad and it was so lawless and the criminals were allowed not just to be on the street and commit crimes, but we were told that if we didn't like the crime in our city, from the homeless to the squeegee guys to the shoplifters, we were told that if we raised an objection, we were the problem. And it got so bad in New York that they did the unthinkable. They elected a Republican, Rudy Giuliani. And he turned it around quicker than you think. David Marcus is right. That right there is exactly how Trump wins Brooklyn. All right. Oh, now that's assuming that Joe Biden is the candidate, but it might not be Joe Biden as the candidate for the Democrats. It might be Michelle Obama. And Michelle Obama is now going on yet another publicity tour. I don't think she's selling a book or anything. She appeared on a podcast and talked about how horrible it is to be Michelle Obama.
The things that keep me up, because you don't have control over them. Mm-hmm. And you wonder, where are we in this? Where are our hearts? What's going to happen in this next election? I am terrified about what could possibly happen, because our leaders matter. Who we select, who speaks for us, who holds that bully pulpit. It affects us in ways that sometimes I think people take for granted.
All right, couple things here. First of all, did you notice talking about our leaders and how she's terrified and she stays up at night about our leadership in this next in 2024? She talked about the leaders that we select. Did you notice that? That's the word she is. Should we hear it one more time? Real fast, real fast, real fast.
About what could possibly happen, because our leaders matter. Who we select, who speaks for us.
Who we select. That's a fascinating word to use when you're talking about the democratic process in our constitutional republic. We don't actually select our leaders. We elect our leaders. Except if Joe Biden doesn't end up being the nominee for the Democrats, and at the convention they have to have a contested, brokered situation where they actually do select a nominee. A lot of people don't think Joe Biden's going to make it all the way to the ticket, but of course it's too late to have a Democrat primary and caucus process. The DNC has done their best to make sure that there isn't a fair selection or election for Democrat voters. So you're going to get Joe Biden right up until the convention. And then if Joe Biden steps down, well then the Democrat members of that convention, the delegates, they will select a leader. Also, that convention is in Chicago, Illinois, hometown of her, Michelle Obama. Fascinating, isn't it? Now, this podcast she's appearing on is called the Jay Shetty Podcast. That's right. It's a truly Shetty podcast, which, by the way, affirms something that I've been saying for over a decade now. Anybody out there can have a podcast. You, too, can have your own Shetty podcast and build your own audience. Jay Shetty, by the way, specializes in mental health issues, has people on the show that suffer from mental health trauma. In fact, one of the most famous interviews that Jay Shetty has done on his Shetty podcast is with Jada Pinkett Smith, who, of course, has been traumatized by many, many mental health crises in the past couple of years, including the whole Will Smith and Chris Rock slap thing at the Oscars. Jada Pinkett Smith, though, doesn't have much in common with Michelle Obama. It's not like both of them are married to men who have had rumors circulating around them about their sexuality, right? They don't have that in common at all. But I'm sure they have something else in common. I'll figure it out one of these days. Michelle Obama went on to talk about the life in America as a Black person, because, you know, Michelle Obama being worth over $70 million with multiple mansions. And, oh, by the way, she was the first lady of the United States, immune from any criticism from anyone in the mainstream. She's had it pretty damn rough.
The White House tests you in ways that you never anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we came out as a family, as individuals, the four of us, me and our two daughters, that was us.
Mm-hmm.
That was our values, our compassion, our smarts, our strategy that got us through. You know, I'm so proud of my husband and the way he led, the way his administration worked, the team that we built. So proud of everyone. I may have diverted from the question, but
beautiful. Please continue.
I think that's because of who we are. And I know that now.
I can see it in your eyes and feel it from your words. Like it must be hard, like knowing that, you know, it can't always be that way in one sense. It's almost like great that you've been able to leave, but there's that feeling also of like, oh, but that was great.
I mean, the bars are different for people in life. That I've learned. This is the thing about being an other.
Mm-hmm.
You learn how to be excellent all the time because you can't be less than. Other people can. Other people can be indicted a bunch of times and still run for office. Black man can't.
Okay, so a couple of things here, and I'm pretty sure I'm about to get in trouble. First of all, Mrs. Obama, I hate to break it to you, but your husband should have been indicted for multiple things while he was in the White House and before he was in the White House and after he was in the White House. In fact, the color of his skin is probably the thing that has prevented him from being under scrutiny like any other politician would be. And secondly, when you're an other, she considers herself an other. She was celebrated and honored, and they're naming streets after this woman. She was the most photographed woman on the planet. They continue to put her on the covers of magazines as a heroine, and yet she still has this victim mentality. I mean, I'm glad she's doing this mental health podcast because there is something wrong if you are living the life of Michelle Obama and still feel like you are a victim. And one other thing about that statement you just heard from her. Did you hear the humble brag? You know, the bar is different when you're an other. You have to be perfect. That's what she's basically saying. You know, I am under so much scrutiny because of the color of my skin that it's forced me to be impeccable. It's forced me to be perfect. It's rough being me, being perfect. Oh my God. There aren't enough eyes to roll here. There's one other thing, this really Shetty podcast that Jay Shetty is conducting here. There's one other thing that Michelle Obama said here at the beginning that I want to focus on.
The White House tests you in ways that you never anticipated. And the fact that we came out as a family, as individuals, the four of us, me and our two daughters, that was us. That was our values, our compassion, our smarts, our strategy. That
again, the humility here, you know, the fact that we emerged from, what do you mean emerged? For God's sake, you were given a yellow brick road of gold with offers from Netflix and books and movies and tens of millions of dollars. I mean, for crying out loud. But let me just afford her the benefit of the doubt here. We emerged from our 8 torturous years as the most powerful couple on the planet in the White House because of our smarts and our compassion and our principles and our values. Okay, I'm going to stipulate all of that. Why doesn't she afford that same courtesy to anyone else in the country? Think about it for a minute. She and her husband prey on people's insecurities and prey on the divisions in this country over race, over sex, over religion. And they will have you believe that because of the color of your skin, because of your body parts, because of who you're attracted to sexually, or because of your ethnicity or your religious faith, if you're not a white male Christian, then anything bad that happens to you isn't really your fault. It's because of the systemic discrimination and bigotry in this country, right? I mean, this is what they thrive on, is that philosophy, that idea. But you can't have it both ways. You can't tell me that you have succeeded because of your principles and your values and your intelligence and your compassion. Yet at the same time, if people don't succeed, well, it's not their fault. It's not because of their lack of principles. It's not because of their lack of values. It's not because of their lack of smarts. It's not because of their lack of compassion. It's because of systemic racism or systemic homophobia or systemic sexism or whatever. Just fill in the blank. Do you see how manipulative this is? The fact is, she's right. She and her husband, and I'm guessing her children, have pretty successful lives in this country because they worked their tails off, because they did get an education, because they did have good values and principles. You learn about Michelle Obama's father, who had 3 jobs and was barely around because he wanted to make sure that his daughter had an opportunity in life. That's a great American success story. She will not tell it that way. She will say that they had to fight against systemic racism and it's a miracle that they made it out. No, actually, it's not a miracle. It's hard work. It's doing the right thing. She will never say that about other people, though. She'll only say it about herself when she can pat herself on the back. And it would have been great if this podcast happened with an interviewer that was less interested in, well, being Michelle Obama's best friend, let's say, rather than actually focusing on what she was saying. Mr. Shetty there on his Shetty podcast, not really a journalist, really interested in getting those clicks by having Michelle Obama. I get it. I understand. But there are real journalists out there that could have conducted a pretty good interview. Although, if the left has their way in this country, there won't be many real journalists left. Look what happened in Canada yesterday when a journalist approached a member of parliament and asked some pretty basic questions about her job and how she's conducting herself in her job. Last I checked, that's what the journalists are supposed to do in a free society, right? Speak truth to power. Well, watch what happened to this journalist.
Freeland, how come the IRGC is not a terrorist group? Why is your government supporting Islamo-Nazis? What? You did me. What are you doing? You're under arrest for assault. What, sir? Why are you pushing me? You're under arrest for assault. Who are you? You're under arrest for assault. Police, you're under arrest. How am I under arrest? You bumped into me. You pushed into me. You bumped. I was just scrubbing. I got my credentials here, and you just bumped into me.
He's claiming that the police officer here, who was trying to arrest a journalist for literally doing his job and asking a question of a member of parliament, is claiming that he was assaulted by the journalist for bumping into him. Let's just watch it one more time so you can see.
A terrorist group. Why is your government supporting Islamo-Nazis? What? You did me. What are you doing? You're under arrest for assault. What, sir?
That was the entirety of the assault. You saw what happened. You saw who pumped into who. But that's an actual member of law enforcement in Canada, and he literally arrested this journalist.
Police.
You saw the website there, standwithdavid.com, to help him fight this fight. Just understand something. Canada is the liberal bastion of North America. You ask any Democrat here in America, any liberal, any left wing, what they think of Justin Trudeau and the healthcare system and the gun laws in Canada and anything else about the way Canada conducts their business. And they see it as Valhalla. They see it as the nirvana. They see it as the pristine goal that they would have here in the lower 48. And you betcha they would love for the First Amendment to be exercised in this manner. Watch what happens.
You're under arrest. What is your name and your badge? What is your name and your badge? You've been told you're under arrest. Why am I under arrest? He blocked my way. What? I was just scrumming Christian Freeland.
I'm a police officer. You're under arrest.
What is your name and your badge number?
Assaulting a police officer.
How is that possible?
Okay, because
you assaulted me 3 years ago when blackface was
very aggressive.
You mean I was asking questions aggressively?
No, your actions were. You were almost pushing everybody over. That's how it appears.
Lincoln, you got this on video, right? He's saying I'm pushing people over. That's an absolute falsehood.
There were feet were shuffling.
So now it appeared that way. That's what you're saying, officer. It appeared I was pushing people. I didn't touch a single person.
That was a little bit aggressive for what was happening. Get that? You're under arrest. Please
okay.
Take the microphone out of my face.
Well, I'd like an ongoing record of this.
Can I have the microphone? Can I have the microphone? Can I have the microphone? Can you give?
I'm not officer. Take your hand out. Why am I under arrest? I'm just doing my job.
Resist. You don't need to resist, sir. You don't have to say anything. You know the truth.
I have nothing to hide, officer. Welcome to Blackfaces Canada. This is what they do to journalists. I was merely scrumming Minister Freeland, and a RCMP officer blocked me, and evidently this is now a trumped-up charge of assault, folks. I didn't come here to cause any trouble. I came here to do my job, and now I'm handcuffed. This is your Canada now, folks. You know, this is the Gestapo taking blackface's orders. Outrageous. And meanwhile, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is not a terrorist organization. Is not a terrorist organization. And these liberals have the audacity to show up at a vigil for a plane in which almost 200 people were killed, 57 Canadians, one unborn child, by the way. And look at this. They don't want, it is against the law in Blackfaces Canada to ask insensitive questions.
StandWithDavid.com, indeed, StandWithDavid.com. Unbelievable scene there. Harrowing, terrifying, despicable, disgusting. And I know you will join me in rallying around all of the members of the American media here in Washington, D.C., who were screaming about the shredding of the First Amendment under the Trump presidency, how he was an existential threat to the free press in America, that they were championing the rights of reporters that were being trampled upon by Donald Trump. I'm sure you will join me with Jim Acosta and Jake Tapper and George Stephanopoulos. Let's look at the videos that they put out supporting this reporter. I've got nothing. I've got absolutely nothing. There's been no coverage in the American media about this. They're letting their brother reporter just languish in jail under a false charge of assault. And you just saw it unfold before your eyes. And meanwhile, they love Canada. I love Canada too, by the way. But they got to fix two things. They got to fix their leadership and the way they execute their laws, like we just saw unfold before us. And for God's sake, they got to figure out how to win a Stanley Cup, because it's been over 30 years. Las Vegas just won the Stanley Cup. Get your act together, Canucks. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. My name's Larry O'Connor, but you can call me Larry.